This program is brought to you by Bundle, Itar Innovative Technology, Real Root Supplements, Paw Privacy, Moringa's Finest, and MVO 2026. Prepare today.
He named the names, and it's people very close to Zelensky and his regime. They're making the money. They love a war because it allows children to disappear and no one asks any questions.
So you have Ukrainian whistleblowers.
One of them was killed, and the other one was injured badly with a bomb. I played the clip where Vasily goes to his car and the car explodes. It was from a car park camera. You could see it. That's what happened. So, I mean, that's what happened to the whistleblowers. I didn't have a happy childhood myself, and one thing that really upsets me is if people are harming children. I really react very badly to it. Is it satanic? I believe it is, and I think the people who are running this and many other things they're perpetrating against the people of the world, I think they're Luciferians. I think it's some sort of child sacrifice cult. I've looked them in the eyes, and they are soulless people. And why do they do it? Well, I mean, you can look. I mean, you see a young child, they're the nearest thing to God we've got on this planet. You know, they're so innocent. They're in God's image, and the younger they are, the more innocent they are, and it's the biggest affront to God that these people can do, and that's why they do it. That's what I honestly believe is the biggest of harming children is the biggest affront to God, and that's why they do it.
Hello, wonderful people. I hope you're having a fantastic morning. I had to take a little moment before I filmed this. I watched the intro just now as, you know, it was recording. It's going to be a rough one, but this is the mentality that we have to keep. I mentioned, I think just yesterday, how in regards to child trafficking and this Ninth Circle cult and all these little cults. So my take is that the Ninth Circle cult, the Vatican, is like the mother of all harlots as well, because there are a bunch of little mini cults that have broken off of that. You know, we talk about the synagogue of Satan. Mother of all harlots is Catholicism twofold, with the cult world and the fake Christian, you know, the lukewarm Christian world. So we have to keep this mindset. You know, I mentioned that yesterday. I have to take breaks from this stuff. This is overwhelming. Sometimes I can't think of even words to say, you know, so bear with me. We can take breaks. I can take a day off. I can take a week off from covering child trafficking. And I haven't covered it much lately. But these kids don't get a day off. They don't get to take breaks. And their life expectancy, I mean, if what they're doing to babies, that's infanticide. And people need to understand that abortion is child sacrifice. I just wrapped it up.
There's a problem.
Right?
There's no guarantee on the box, but it's not on the box. It should always be on the box, comforting you, calling out, I'm good, I'll never let you down, but if I do, I'm going to make things all better. My customers need to see that little label looking them right.
You want to talk about guarantees, then...
Fellas, you just ran out of time. Chicken wings.
Let's think about this for a sec, Ted. Why would somebody put a guarantee on a box? Very interesting.
Go on, I'm listening.
Here's the way I see it, Ted. Guy puts a fancy guarantee on a box because he wants you to feel all warm and toasty inside.
Yeah, makes a man feel good.
Of course it does. Why shouldn't it? You figure you put that little box under your pillow at night, the guarantee fairy might come by and leave a quarter. Am I right, Ted?
What's your point?
The point is, how do you know the fairy isn't a crazy glue sniffer? Building model airplane, says the little fairy. Well, we're not buying it. He sneaks into your house once, that's all it takes. Next thing you know, there's money missing off the dresser and your daughter's knocked up. I've seen it 100 times.
But why do they put a guarantee on the box then?
Because they know all they sold you was a guaranteed piece of shit. That's all it is, isn't it? Hey, if you want me to take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed, I will. I got spare time. But for now, for your customer's sake, for your daughter's sake, you might want to think about buying a quality product from me.
Okay, I'll buy from you.
Oh, that's what?
That's what I thought. I had scheduled one. I had gotten pregnant by accident. Well, not intended. And I did. I had so much pressure from the man, too, to get the abortion. I had to block him from my phone. But I did. I scheduled it, and I couldn't go through with it, though. Oh, I couldn't go through with that. They called me the day before, and I was like, just to confirm and remind me of the appointment. And I said, I'm not going to show up. I can't go through with that. And it wasn't an inconvenience. It was hard, but it was hard in the sense like, okay, my first job I got when I was 12, I worked on a horse farm. Loved horses. My neighbor had horses, and after school every day I'd go up to the fence and I'd just hang out, watch the horses or talk to the horses, whatever. So the owner finally came over. It's like, hey, you want a job? She's like, I'll teach you how to take care of the horses, and in return, instead of paying you, you can get free lessons for everything, including bareback. It was incredible. Thank you, God. That was such a blessing. I needed that too, because I had a rough childhood. But it was hard work. Mucking those stalls, especially like in the winter, that's hard work. But you know what? It's not inconvenient. It's good. It's really good. It's like when your muscles ache after a good workout. That's good pain, we call that, right? Oh, excuse me, I need to stretch. Don't mind me. So we can take a day off, but these little babies and these children, they don't get a day off, and they're being brutalized daily, and they're being tortured and then desecrated. And the battle for your mind, it is ongoing. We haven't reached the end yet. There's still time. But the battle for your soul is knocking at the door. The internet is like the Romans. God needed the Roman Empire to come about and do their thing because the Romans were the ones who built the roads. And we needed roads to tell people the good news. Once we had the roads, didn't need the Romans anymore. Jesus was crucified and resurrected and appeared. And then the apostles and all the saints could go about the world and spread the good news. And that is what we are seeing with the internet today. God needed the internet, and maybe he needs this AI. He'll use it somehow to his advantage, and or something, right? So that everybody can find out about this child trafficking. I believe the battle for your soul is going to end with what you do regarding the knowledge of this massive, this global child abuse network. I believe we are judged regarding how we treat the most vulnerable. We're judged for a lot of other things too, but how we treat the most vulnerable. And our most vulnerable are babies and young children. So this is how we're going to be judged. And this information is being collaborated all over the world by different people who don't know each other, who are able to put the pieces together by sharing information. And we now, I believe, can confirm with 99.99999 to 100% accuracy that Donald Trump and royals and Big Pharma and the banks and the Roman Catholic Church and all her little whore daughters are part of this global cult. And they are responsible for the vast majority of this trafficking, if not all of it, because they are Luciferian. They're like the head of the snake. And we're all finding out. We're all finding out a lot about ourselves. We're all finding out what we're made of. And we're going to be judged. We're going to be judged for this. I guarantee. I guarantee. When you find out about all this stuff and then you choose to do nothing about it and just go about your life like it doesn't matter, you're going to get judged for that. For not even trying to help do anything, to stand up for these babies, these little kids. You're going to be judged for that. You're going to be judged for that. How can that not be like one of the greatest things that you're judged for, you know? So we can't stop. We can take breaks though, just not long ones. We have to stick with this. We have to see this to the end. And we have to, we have to help and pray for our neighbors. We have to be vigilant in both regards. So try not to get triggered. I absolutely have no control whether or not you get triggered over this, but you can get through it. Dear God, help us. Dear God, please. Father God, help us to get through this video. Not let it affect us in any kind of negative way, God, and instill in us the instructions that we need to move forward down the path of rescuing every child, exposing all these heinous criminals, and making them accountable, dear God. Help us figure out how we're supposed to get justice for these children and these families. Help us save the children. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay, let's get through it. Let's find out exactly who's involved and what we are going to do to stop them. Thank you so much. I'd like to preface this by saying that this content is not appropriate for children, obviously. It's not even appropriate for teenagers, in my opinion. This should be a video that adults who have children watch. So you're going to have to share this information, obviously, with your teens and your young adult children. However, you have to be very careful. Obviously, use your own judgment, but just be very careful about how much you share with them. Because, again, this is overwhelming for adults. We don't want to harm our kids in any way. Too much truth. It's like that song, Be Careful, Little Lambs, What You See. Oh, be careful, little lambs, what you see. That one, remember? Oh, be careful, little lambs, what you hear, what you say, right? So, our public schools treat our children like adults. We have to make sure that we aren't doing that. We treat them as children to protect them. I also want everybody to keep in mind that a lot of our ICE agents are these men. A lot of our law enforcement are these men who are protecting the kids. Just like this ex-British MP, that's why they get into law enforcement. The vast majority of them get into it for the right reasons. Okay, we got to remember that.
When Tony Blair, who's a very evil man, And if you look at his face now, you'll see that he's like a devil sick of sin. In 97, when they got in with New Labour, it's very telling. The first piece of legislation they rushed to put through the House of Commons, after 17 years in opposition, was to take the death penalty out of the Treason Act in 1997. Looking back now, it is evident why they took the death penalty out of the Treason Act. Because that government, and every government since, has committed treason against the people.
You think they're actually taking care of themselves?
Absolutely. Well, of course they do. What? Ask them why. Why, after 17 years in opposition, was your first priority is we've got to take the death penalty out of the Treason Act? Why? Because they were committing treason, and they knew they were. And every government has done it since of all different kinds.
So they fear tribunals.
And Rishi Sunak, what he never told anybody was that when he was Chancellor during the pandemic, and later Prime Minister, is that he had acquired 11% of Moderna shares in 2016 for $500 million. It was held in a fund.
Please watch my video about the nanotechnology in the vaccines. Scientists have studied samples of Moderna and other vaccines and have found unknown biological organisms, nanotechnology, all kinds of terrible things. But we can detox. There is good news that we can detox. So watch my video on that, please. Big Pharma has also been named in the International Criminal Court case for the sexual abuse and murder of children regarding the Ninth Circle cult. It's the CEO of Pfizer, in fact, Burla.
East of the Cayman Islands for tax purposes, called Thaleen, and Rishi Sunak was one of the founding partners of it. And he bought £500 million worth of shares in Moderna when they only had 10 employees and no products. But he's still a very, very powerful man, and he's a very rich man, worth probably over £1 billion, married to a woman whose father is the second richest man in India, who also owns Infosys, which we're bringing in the digital ID.
Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have...
Looks like I lost the connection. Bear with me. We have to keep in mind that there's not very many of them. Like if 13 families are at the top, yeah, I'm sure they have a lot of kids, whatever. You know what, though? They got a lot of minions. But all in all, the vast majority of us are not pedophiles. Their power is perceived. It's fictitious. At the end of the day, we could easily trample on them. It even says so in the Bible. We have full authority to trample on all serpents. Okay, these people are full of serpents. They're just shells full of spirits and demons that we have authority over. At the end of the day, we need to remember that.
digital ID.
And people think the Brit card stands for British. It's not. It's biometric registration, identification and tracking.
Really?
Yes. They're so clever. Wow. People think, oh, it's patriotic. It's our Brit card. History shows us that anyone who's willing to give up their freedom for security ends up with neither freedom nor security. What our governments are trying to do is convince us that our freedoms are actually privileges. And of course, privileges can be removed if they consider that your behaviour is unsuitable. And people need to wake up to that, and we need to stop it now.
While the lighthouse keeps its quiet watch, a fragile balance returns once the storm has finished what it came to do. Overwhelming, ever-changing, a new horizon appears, and still unaware as we are, we find ourselves searching again for that one thing, what is true. Welcome everybody to the first English edition of Aan de Waterkant, at the waterside, where I endlessly try to understand a little bit more of the utmost complex world out there. Today with ex-member of Parliament of the UK, Andrew Bridgen, Great to have you here. You were here for the premiere of the documentary Beneath the Surface, produced by David Icke, a film about satanic ritual, sex and child abuse. Heavy stuff that we're going to talk about later with lots of other subjects. But to start off right, for people that don't know you at all, who is Andrew Bridgen?
I'm someone who was brought up in northwest Leicestershire in the middle of the UK. I'm a self-made man, so, believe it or not, the house I was brought up in, until 11, we didn't have mains electricity. I went through the state education system. I did well. I was trained in the military. I set a business up with my little brother in 1988 with £1,000 of startup. And in 22 years, I built that up to a 30 million business employing 300 people. Had all the trappings of success. And just thought I wanted to give something back to the local area. Met some like-minded small and medium-sized business people who also were very upset about the state of affairs of northwest Leicestershire, which was the poorest area in the county of Leicestershire. It was the poorest. And I said, it's no good us moaning anymore. So if you all stand for the council, I'll put the money up for the campaigns. I'll stand for Member of Parliament and we'll just take over. And we did. And we did that in 2007. I was elected to Parliament in 2010, the first chance I had to stand in the area. We took over the local council in 2007. And it took us 12 years to convert northwest Leicestershire from the poorest area in the county to the richest and the happiest place to live in the Midlands. And we did it. And then while I'm in Parliament, I didn't get into politics the normal way. I didn't go through the party system. The Conservative Party, they said he couldn't win in northwest Leicestershire. So they never sent me any money, but that didn't matter. I had my own money, so I could pay for my own campaign. My loyalty was to the people of northwest Leicestershire, the people I'd grown up with, the people I'd been to school with, and they couldn't really control me because I had my own money. So from the very beginning, I was the MP who uncovered, unfortunately for the government, the Post Office Horizon scandal, which was the biggest miscarriage of justice in the UK's history at the time, where about 1,200 sub-postmasters were criminally convicted of fraud when actually it was a faulty software system, accounting system, that they were being forced to use, made by Fujitsu.
Wait, time is approximately
Taxes. Make this one simple change when filling out your FAFSA to cut your EFC and SAI in half, so you can pay for your kids' college without taking.
I also uncovered modern slavery in the garment, in the fast fashion industry, in the nearby city of Leicester, which my seat doesn't border, but I was past.
I always say that there are grooming industries. They include beauty, fashion, modeling, okay? Trump, pageantry. It's all part of the child trafficking network, and I believe that Trump mentored Jeffrey Epstein as far as modeling, trafficking through that.
The information. I also opposed the high-speed rail, government's high-speed rail plans for 10 years. I always maintained it was going to go out of control and it would be a huge waste of tens of billions of pounds of money, and that's actually what happened, and it was cancelled in my area, but they did me damage. And it just happens, Fabio, that many years ago, when I was at university at Nottingham, my subjects of interest, which I was interested in, which allowed me more time to play rugby, was biological sciences with biochemistry, specialising in genetics, virology and behaviour. Because of my degree, I was speaking to scientists who were asking legitimate questions about how the vaccines were working and the psychology of the lockdowns and the messaging, and they were just being cancelled And that set the red flags going for me, because that isn't how science works. But anyone who ever says to anybody that the science is settled, I mean, that just isn't how science works. Science always has to be challenged and should be defended. And, it's thesis, counter-thesis, modified ideas. I mean, even doctors who qualify today would be told on their last day at medical school that half of what you've been taught will be proved to be wrong within 10 years. And you've got to constantly retrain and keep up to date. Well, that's how science is. So as soon as I saw people being cancelled for asking very legitimate questions, I became more and more concerned. And my concern, the more information I found out and I could read the scientific papers, the more my concerns.
Andrew, you have an interesting track record as a politician, but you became kind of famous all over the world because of your rants in the House of Parliament in the UK. Let's watch an interesting clip where you speak to only a few members of Parliament that were left in the building, but there was a lot of audience. The public was bursting. Let's see what happened that day.
These are very hard truths to face, but we must face them, Madam Deputy Speaker, if we want to learn the lessons of the last few years. At some point, we'll have to face up that all the evidence is building. It was fairly convincing 18 months ago when I first spoke out. It is unequivocal now. So I asked the House, it's time to take the politics out of our science, and we need to put some actual science back into our politics. I asked the House to support the motion today for the Baroness Hallett's inquiry to open Module 4 on the safety and efficacy of the experimental COVID-19 vaccines. And given the evidence, Madam Deputy Speaker, I call on the government once again to immediately suspend the use of all mRNA treatments in both humans and animals, pending the outcome of that inquiry.
No.
Yikes. Yikes. What is that? Look at you. What do we have here? Is this a human? That is that real skin? It looks kind of like it's fallen off around the eyes. The shape of the eyes are a little off too. Is this inbreeding we're looking at? There's something going on there.
We would have to clear the gallery if clapping continues. I would order it if necessary.
So she's got the ball.
Here's a hot take. If you have a message inside you that people are meant to hear, it'll never make the impact that it truly deserves.
The audience was very loud, and she said, we have to clear the building if this goes on, continues. If clapping continues.
What you heard there on the audio was through bulletproof glass, and it's never been heard before. You've never heard the crowd before in the public gallery.
But there were only a few members of Parliament present.
Yes.
Was it?
Because the members of Parliament didn't want to hear what I was saying. They wanted culpable deniability that they weren't there. But the public interest over the safety and efficacy of the vaccines was immense. So the public gallery was full in Parliament that day, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people who couldn't get in. So after that debate, which I led, I went into Parliament Square and gave a speech to all the people who couldn't get into the public gallery.
Can we say that this is a historical moment in every...
That never happened before. You never, ever heard the public cheering a speech through the bulletproof glass from the public gallery, no. And I don't recall the speaker, or that was the deputy speaker, threatening to clear the public gallery, which was an affront to democracy. If you had to clear it's the people's parliament. It's not MP's parliament. It's supposed to be the people's house. But all I've noticed the last few years is that the armed security guards, armed police, has increased probably 400%, and the fences around the building get ever higher.
Why did you come to the Netherlands, and why did you join this event?
Well, I was asked to come and give a speech beforehand, and it's something that I'm aware of. It's something that very early on in my career I realised that no one ever wants to talk about child abuse or child trafficking in the UK Parliament. And obviously now anything that no one wants to talk about is another, well, a warning signal. We don't even have a crime in the UK of satanic child abuse because it doesn't happen. It's just child abuse. There's no satanic. That can't be thought of.
Kind of the same in the Netherlands. They erased the subject.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of child abuse going on in Leicester, which is the nearest city to where my area is. I was finding out a lot of, and it was linked to politicians, historic and current, and it was linked into the police as well. I mean, I gave evidence against the head of police.
But do you agree with David Icke, who produced this documentary Beneath the Surface, that there is this kind of satanic cult dealing with child abuse for
Yes.
for a long time?
Yes. Well, you look at the children that disappear and the reluctance of the state. I mean, we live in a surveillance state. We're all surveilled. But still, these children can just disappear. Well, they only can disappear because the state allows them to disappear. And that's across the whole world. And because I'd spoken out about the post office and the modern slavery in the garment industry and the vaccines, people came to me with information that no other MP would look at.
They trusted you.
They trusted me, and they were desperate. I mean, these were desperate people. They'd been to their own MP and they wouldn't touch it. They came to me and I looked and I considered it, and there was evidence there, and I was given evidence that that there was industrial child trafficking.
Industrial.
Yeah. From the Ukraine via Moldova to the UK for sexual abuse and organ harvesting. And as horrible as that is, and it's, you know, there are still people who don't want to hear about the vaccines not being safe and effective, and this is another step on from there to systemic child abuse and trafficking. But I mean, unfortunately, we have to live in the world as it is, not how we'd like it to be. And it's a fact. And I looked at the evidence, I saw what the group had done, and they tried to take it to the police in the UK. They'd taken it to Gloucestershire Police because they've got a specialist unit in child trafficking, and they wouldn't do anything. They'd taken it to MI5, they'd taken it to MI6, they'd taken it to the National Crime Agency, and they'd got recordings of all their conversations with these agencies. And nobody was, and I wrote and sent the evidence into the government. I sent it into the leader of the House, and I sent it into the Lord Chancellor, who's in charge of the judiciary. And all I got back was, if you think a crime has been committed, take it to the police. Well, I'd already pointed out that they'd already been to the police, and no one wants to deal with it. And the answer was that the information had come from two Ukrainian Secret Service agents who independently, so they didn't know about each other, they'd given the same information, and the information was that the Ukrainian Secret Services were collecting children during the conflict in the Donbass, and they were handing them over to UK Secret Services who were trying.
Yeah, and you worked on a documentary about this topic.
Yes.
Shall we just have a look at the trailer? The
Yes.
trailer is called From War to Exploitation, the Crisis of Child Trafficking in Ukraine.
High-ranking individuals in the Ukraine and the UK, international corporate companies' funds being directed to these individuals, child trafficking from the Ukraine to Moldova to the UK to be used in the sex trade and organ harvesting. Get ready for the expose of the century.
She died 2 weeks after delivering this message. Watch this before they delete it.
What is cancer exactly?
very difficult to cope with this information that it really exists, and maybe that's also the reason why people look away. But if
they don't want to believe it exists.
If you have children yourself, it's something that should bother you, should interest you. But I have children myself, and I have to admit, when I dig into these subjects, it kind of makes me feel very, very, very almost sick.
Yeah.
So I intend to look away from it. What is this energy that makes you look away? Because you have children, but you didn't look away.
As an elected member of parliament, I always thought my job was to protect the interest of the people who voted for me. I mean, whether that's the economic interest and economic growth and well-being, or from exploitation. And looking in the dark corners that no one else wants to look in. I mean, there's some pretty horrendous things in there. And I'd uncovered so much corruption through my 14 years in Parliament. I mean, everything that didn't add up or no one wanted to talk about, it was always corruption.
Yeah, but what did it expose, this documentary? And did it change anything?
Yes. When I exposed all this, what it happened was that I was actually arrested and accused of paedophilia.
You were arrested?
Yes, 3 weeks later. And they made ludicrous accusations that I was a member of the Freemasons. And, I mean, the police could have found that out in 5 minutes. That I've never.
So you were actually arrested?
I was brought in and questioned under caution, on the old record. And I had to have a lawyer there. They offered me the government lawyer, obviously, but that wouldn't have been very good, would it? So, and, they had to drop it. They said there were evidential problems. That's because there was no evidence. And that was just a warning. I mean, that's what they do to people.
But it's almost a joke.
It wasn't, well, it's not a joke when you're in.
Now remember, the man who ran against Brian Fitzpatrick, the representative who is also was and still is FBI out in California, of all places, the most corrupt state. He's also head of the Intel Committee, CIA Intel, okay? He's the representative for Ukraine. You know how, like, Biden was given Ukraine? Well, it seems to have been passed along to Brian Fitzpatrick. So he's doing all the wheeling and dealings in there, it seems. And, of course, there's child trafficking. Big time through Zelensky. Zelensky, the actor. And he's like a mini Trump, right? So Brian Fitzpatrick is trafficking these kids out of Ukraine. Let's just get back to it.
The police station, and they're asking you the questions they're asking you. Yeah. I mean, it's appalling.
I forgot. The man who ran against Brian Fitzpatrick, I think he's got 7 kids, Catholic man, had his house swatted. Watch my video about it. It's incredible.
8 years ago, I gave evidence that the chief constable of Leicestershire was a paedophile. Yeah, I didn't investigate him though.
But the result,
I gave that evidence to the police.
The result is that you were investigated. But
yes,
did anybody do anything with your information?
No, they wouldn't do anything with it. Except what we do know now is that the operation, which was running out of the UK, they've moved the administration of it to Belgium since this program came out. And there was nothing in the mainstream media about anything that's in that program. And they didn't attack it, they just ignore it. That's what they always do. It just doesn't exist.
How big is this?
There's more money, I think we can accept, there's more money in child trafficking and sex trafficking of children than there is in drugs or weapons.
Because it's also about organs, eh?
They trade the children. They only sell the drugs once. They sell the children many, many times. And then when they're finished with them, they organ harvest them. That's why you never find the victims in the end. It's appalling. But that's how much money. There's huge amounts of money in it. And it's state-sponsored. And that's why you will not stop it at the moment, because the state will never investigate the state. But there were people very close. If you watch the documentary, there are people in MI6 linked into the companies that were, I believe, laundering the money, which is Economics, and it was funded by USAID, which thankfully Donald Trump shut down some months ago. That canonics is in 27 countries, and they were taking donations for doing work with children. Fabio, I think they were the payments for the children. Yeah, they were the payments for the children. That's what I suspect. And yeah, nobody wants to talk about it. No agency. Well, I'm not surprised. You can't get the state to investigate the state. And it is state-sponsored. And it's worldwide. And that's why so many millions of children go missing every year.
How do you know that it's real, what you're saying? How do we find
real proof? Because the two originators of the information, who didn't know each other, were both Ukrainian Secret Service agents who were appalled at what they were being asked to do, which was collect the children up for trafficking. One was killed in a cafe, a bomb was put under his table, and the second one had a bomb put under his car and survived. And he named the names, and it's people very close to Zelensky and his regime that are, I mean, they're making the money. That's what they love a war, because it allows children to disappear and no one asks any questions.
So you have Ukrainian whistleblowers,
but one of them was killed, and the other one was injured badly with a bomb. I've got I played the clip where
one too many pairs of shoes.
I played the clip where Vasily goes to his car and the car explodes. It was from a car park camera. You could see it. That's what happened. So, I mean, that's what happened to the whistleblowers. And the person in the group I'd got who took the information to the National Crime Agency 2-3 days after she'd given this exclusive information, evidence of child trafficking, and naming the companies, someone from the company, Canonics, was checking out her social media history and her LinkedIn profile. So clearly the National Crime Agency had leaked the evidence to the company that we'd implicated, and then they were starting to investigate my team.
Did you start to feel unsafe also about the safety of your own children after this documentary?
Well, we're not safe, are we? But I mean, that if they want to do something very bad to you, they're going to do it. So there's no point being scared about that. And you know, I stood up and spoke about the vaccines when my government tried to force the experimental COVID vaccines down to babies of 6 months. I did not go into politics to allow children to be murdered or injured if I can do anything about it. But the unfortunate thing was, Fabio, that I spoke to all my colleagues in the House of Commons. Lots of them knew that the vaccines, even in 2022, were very harmful. A lot of them had been harmed themselves, but wouldn't go public, and they were quite happy for the children to be harmed. So, but I did stand up, and with those speeches, I stopped my government from authorising those vaccines for children under 5. And that was the end of my career. You know, so that's the end of your career if you do that. But, you know, it wasn't for nothing, was it? Yeah? You know, I had a chance, and I knew I could do it to protect those children. And what's the difference between that and seeing them trafficked for the sex trade to paedophiles? I mean, I didn't have a happy childhood myself. And one thing that really upsets me is if people are harming children. I don't like it. I really react very badly to it. Because, is it satanic? I believe it is. And I think the people who are running this and many other things they're perpetrating against the people of the world, I think they're Luciferians. I think it's some sort of child sacrifice cult. I've looked them in the eyes. I mean, they're soulless people. And why do they do it? But I mean, you can look. I mean, you see a young child. They're the nearest thing to God we've got on this planet. You know, they're so innocent. They're in God's image. And the younger they are, the more innocent they are. And it's the biggest affront to God that these people can do. And that's why they do it. That's what I honestly believe is the biggest of harming children is the biggest affront to God. And that's why they do it. They're godless people.
Hi there, I'm Del Bigtree. I'm the host of the internet talk show, thehighwire.com. I wanted to let you know that on February 10th, I'm coming to the Netherlands for an exclusive event organized by Lighthouse TV. It's called Battle for Science. It's inspired by my film, An Inconvenient Study, which you can watch right now at aninconvenientstudy.com, exposing what happens when scientific results become inconvenient. When top scientists refuse to publish their findings because it would mean it'd be the end of their career. You see, science is under attack, and that's why I'm joining Battle for Science, where I will discuss this topic with brave scientists like cardiologist Dr. Peter McCullough, WHO whistleblower Dr. Astrid Stuckelberger, Professor Matthias Desmet, and Professor Theo Shedders, and many other scientists. And yes, you'll be able to ask me questions, maybe even meet me in person along with all the other speakers. So if you care about freedom, if you care about truth and scientific integrity, and you want to meet some of my favorite scientists in the world, this is an event you do not want to miss. Join me at the Battle for Science, February 10th in the Netherlands. I'll see you there.
After I spoke out about the vaccines, no one in Parliament would speak to me. I went nearly 2 years where I had to eat all my meals on my own. No one would talk to me. None of the MPs want to talk to me. And in the February of 2023, after I've stopped them jabbing the small children, a guy who used to be, I thought he was my friend, probably the man who got me into politics, he came up to me in the House of Commons and put his arm around me. And I thought, this is quite nice, he's being friendly. And he whispered in my ear and he said, Andrew, you can speak out about the vaccines all you want to, mate. You're vaccinated. He said, that means you'll be dead of cancer soon. And he laughed and walked off. I mean, what sort of person would ever say that to anybody?
Terrifying. There's a lot going on in the UK the last few years. Brexit, Brit ID, we're going to talk about these things later on. But there's also something with the gang rapes. And let's just watch a clip and let's see what you have to say about it. Gang rapes in the UK.
Well, Sir Mark Rowley, who is the beleaguered head of the Metropolitan Police, has been talking to the London Assembly. He has been saying that there's been an initial data identifying around 9,000 historic cases that could be linked to child sexual abuse and rape gangs. Do you have confidence that the Metropolitan Police, which now says it's investigating tens of group-based child sex abuse cases involving rape gangs, or could well be involved rape gangs, the Forces Commissioner has said, do you have confidence that will get to grips with it and take it properly, seriously, finally?
I don't, Peter, because this is the same commissioner and the same mayor who looked the public in the eye and insisted that there were absolutely no grooming gangs. I mean, the mayor almost mocked the question and they pretended not to understand what's being asked. So how on earth can the very people who denied it now be trusted to investigate it? How can the commissioner review what could potentially be either a failure or...
Now think about it, grooming gangs. Think about what I said about the grooming industries, modeling, pageantry, fashion, makeup, beauty, all of them. All this grooming, acting and what have you, right? Grooming gangs. So, yeah, they're not going to admit to it. Of course, they're the Trumps. The leader of the grooming gangs. Like, he's the head. He's the mob boss.
cover up by his own force. You can't be judge and jury and defendant in your own scandal.
Yeah, gang rapes or grooming gangs. Is this the same phenomenon that we discussed before, or is this just something else?
Wait, time is approximately
Texas was feeling... Rowley, who is the beleaguered head of the Metropolitan Police, has been talking to the London Assembly. He has been saying that there's been an initial data identifying around 9,000 historic cases that could be linked to child sexual abuse and rape gangs. Do you have confidence that the Metropolitan Police, which now says it's investigating tens of group-based child sex abuse cases involving rape gangs, or could well be involved rape gangs, the Forces Commissioner has said, do you have confidence that will get to grips with it and take it properly, seriously, finally?
I don't, Peter, because this is the same commissioner and the same mayor who looked the public in the eye and insisted that there were absolutely no grooming gangs. I mean, the mayor almost mocked the question and they pretended not to understand what's being asked. So how on earth can the very people who denied it now be trusted to investigate it? How can the commissioner review what could potentially be either a failure or a cover-up by his own force? You can't be judge and jury and defendant in your own scandal.
Yeah, gang rapes or grooming gangs. Is this the same phenomenon that we discussed before, or is this just something else?
This is predominantly Pakistani, Bangladeshi men grooming underage working class white girls across the country in relatively poor areas and gang raping them. What we know is it's been going on for decades. Again, that's been pushed under the carpet. It was predominantly in South Yorkshire, was probably where it started, in those urban areas.
You see a connection with the satanic ritual child abuse, or is that just a coincidence?
I don't think it's a coincidence, and the reluctance to investigate is because they know where it leads to. What we've found now is that some of the victims went to the police, and the police blackmailed them into allowing them to rape them by threatening, if you don't let me exploit you sexually, I'm going to hand you back to the gangs that you've just run away from. And that's coming out, and there's the reluctance then to investigate. The police, South Yorkshire Police, they were doing an internal investigation into what's gone wrong, and they've had to hand it over to another police force because none of the victims will speak to South Yorkshire Police because they know that they were raped by the policeman as well. So you've got a lot
But then the whole system is rotten.
The whole system is rotten.
Doesn't that make you very, very cynical?
Well, I am cynical, and I've come to the conclusion that in the UK and probably across Europe and the Anglosphere, that our institutional barrels, not all the apples in all the barrels are rotten, but all the apples at the top of all the barrels are rotten. And any apple that wishes to rise to the top, you have to be willing to rot.
Yeah, but
and if you're not willing to rot, you can't rise. And our organisations have become, our institutions have become corrupt. And if you're the head of any corrupt organisation, one of your major jobs is when you come to retire or move on, you've got to make sure that the person who takes your job is at least as corrupt as you were, otherwise it's going to all unravel. And it's been going on for so long, it's become very, very corrupt. And that I'm talking about the police, our politics, the judiciary, a justice system, big corporations.
But it seems like there's so many people involved. How is that possible? I can understand that some people in the top are corrupt, but I used to say that I don't trust the system, but I still have a lot of trust in people. But if so many people are not to trust, what's going on?
Well, a lot of intimidation. Well, how we in the UK Health Service we have 1.4 million people in the National Health Service employed. What we know now is that 90% of the nurses and doctors won't take the COVID boosters and won't even take the flu vaccine.
Ever wonder what your closet is really worth? On Vinted, you can just.
So socialism acts like criminal theology, right? So now they got you. And they're going to threaten, they're going to use intimidation, and it's kind of like one giant bribe. Or it's like borrowing money from the mob, right? I'm going to call upon you to do them a favor one day. It's ridiculous.
The flu vaccine. But they're quite happy to give it to somebody else, some people they wouldn't take themselves. In 2023, a member of Parliament came to me and said, Andrew, you're right about the vaccines, they're killing people. They said, my sister's taken a Moderna booster and now she's paralysed from the neck down.
What does it tell you?
And I said, well, hang on, I'm really sorry about that, but what's going on? You've got to speak out now. She said, my sister's a nurse and they coerced her into taking the booster and now she's paralysed. She's at the mercy of our health service. And she said, you know what the health service is like in the UK with whistleblowers? She said, I daren't speak out because my sister will be hurt by the health service. And she'll get the blame. And she never did speak out, but she knew that the vaccines were hurting people, and it hurt her own sister. But she never spoke out. And all these doctors who are now anti-vaxxers, because 90% of them won't take the shots, but they still give them to the patients. And that's where we've lost our moral compass, haven't we? And it's intimidation from the top. I have a friend in Leicester, an Indian family. I met them after the pandemic again. My friend had 2 Pfizer shots and a booster. He's had 2 strokes. He's older than me. He's not in a good way. His wife was a doctor, a GP. She resigned to look after her husband, who's very ill now. I spoke to her 6 months ago. I said, come on, what were the doctors saying about the efficacy and safety of the vaccines? She said, very quickly, they realised that they're hurting people, and they all said, don't take any more, stop. And I said, and what if you'd given the same advice you were giving each other to your patients? She said, oh, you knew you'd lose your licence, you'd be fired, you'd be sacked. And they accept that as an acceptable situation, where they can have conversations between themselves, but they can't give the same advice to their patients.
This corroborates the testimony of the scientist who found the Hydra vulgaris biological hybrid nanotech organism, or it could be biological. We're not certain, but it's unknown to man. It was inside of the vax, the COVID vax. Remember, this is exactly what she said as well. She went to a conference and they told them what they were doing. And she was like, no way, this is unethical. What are you talking about? And her colleagues were like, listen, like we either join them or we're going to be, the ones who might not make it out alive, basically. So her colleagues were like, well, we're going to join them because we don't want to be, with the other demographic that's being experimented on and genocided. So again, collaboration, oceans apart.
That is where it's all gone wrong, hasn't it? And it's the fear of losing your job. What did Parliament do to me? I mean, they threw me out of the Conservative Party, and they told me quite blatantly they wanted to cover up the vaccine harms and deaths for 20 years. And if you don't do that, you're putting yourself in mortal danger, because the most powerful vested interest in the world are behind the vaccine rollout and the harms that have been done. That's the situation we find ourselves in. So, in the UK Parliament, where, like every other parliament, you're supposed to speak without fear or favour, without intimidation. There's a lot of intimidation. There's a lot of favour. I was offered a bribe in January 2022 of anything I wanted in the world to sell the people out. They offered me anything I wanted. To shut up.
Who did that to you?
Senior officials from Number 10, but they were doing it on behalf of people well above Number 10.
To make you say what?
They said to shut up. Shut up about the lockdowns and the vaccines and complaining about what the government had done.
They came to your office?
Yep. And they offered me anything I wanted. Just tell us what you want and we'll get it for you. But obviously then they've corrupted you as well, so yeah. And I'm shocked, and I said, what do you mean? They said, well, you tell us what you want and we get it for you, and then you play the game. I said, is that the game we're playing? And they said, that's always the game we're playing. I said, well, if in that case, then I do know what I want. If that's the game we're playing, I want the Prime Minister's resignation letter. And they said, I couldn't have that. I said, well, it's a shame because that's the only thing I want if that's the game we're playing. But what we've got a problem is that in parliaments across the world, coming back to the child trafficking and the paedophilia, it is going on worldwide, and there are very few people willing to talk about it. I think it's the glue of loyalty that holds the elites together and those who've joined that club. Because, that is the ultimate compromat. Once you're involved in paedophilia or profiting from child trafficking, it's so taboo that they've got the ultimate blackmail on you. They can control you forever once you've joined that dark side. And I think a lot of people have. I think a lot of people have. And as I say, to gain high office anywhere now, I think you've got to be corrupt. You've got to have been corrupted and be controlled, so they know that they have the control of you. And that's why we have such bizarre decisions made in our politics. You know, that's how we can end up with the nonsense of man-made climate change and, you know, the vilification of carbon dioxide, which is actually the gas of life. The perversion of science.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough, president of McCullough Foundation, internist, cardiologist, and epidemiologist in Dallas, Texas. And on February 10th, I'll be traveling to the Netherlands to be a part of Battle for Science. This is a critical convening of thought leaders and public figures all around the issue of what happened during the pandemic, the suppression of free speech, authoritarianism, professional reprisal, all for a worldwide outbreak of an infectious disease pathogen that emanated out of a Chinese biosecurity lab.
Here's how often you should take oil of oregano. And if you don't believe me, I'm a pancreatic cancer researcher, so biology is my thing. Oregano oil is nature's strongest antimicrobial agent. It removes parasites, bacteria, fungi, viruses, everything. But here's what most people get wrong about dosing. A lot of people say you should take it 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on. And that's true if you're using cheap, weak brands. But when you're using real ultra strength oregano with 85% carvacrol, your body handles it differently. The active ingredient in oregano oil is called carvacrol, and it has powerful effects on your immune system. Some people take it daily for months with no issues. Others prefer cycling. It really depends on what you're dealing with. You should always take oregano oil with black seed oil, because while oregano oil fights off the microbes, black seed oil gives your body antioxidant support and prevents any.
And I've read that black seed oil is good for your immune health, or it's good to help counteract the effects of Lyme disease.
Out of a Chinese biosecurity lab. So join me in presenters such as Astrid Strickelberger, former WHO whistleblower, Matthias Desmet, an expert on totalitarianism, and Professor Theo Shedders. And there'll be so many more there. So please check the link at the end of this video and be sure you make it a priority on February 10th, 2026 to be in the Netherlands and join us for the battle for science. I'll see you there.
It's hard to change the subject because what you're saying is really, really important. But I want to talk about Brexit and later on also about the Brit card, the Brit ID.
Yeah.
Were you pro-Brexit?
Yes, I led the Leave campaign in the East Midlands, so I was right at the top of the Brexit.
Yeah.
And I'd always been. Actually, my first foray into politics at all was in the late 90s as a businessman, when I was business for Sterling and the No campaign to keep the UK out of the euro, which I think was a very good decision because it's much harder to leave the European Union if we'd gone into the euro.
Andrew, let's just watch an analysis of BBC News about Brexit at the moment.
As he took office on Tuesday, Rishi Sunak turned to the Conservatives' election manifesto of 2019.
I will deliver on its promise, building an economy that embraces the opportunities of Brexit.
Mr. Sunak wants to build the economy, but there's no shortage of people who say that Brexit isn't helping to do that.
Brexit is and was and will be a total disaster.
Brexit is doing the economy real damage.
Brexit, as negotiated, is frankly a disaster.
Rishi Sunak wouldn't agree that Brexit's a disaster, and however it's described, based on available evidence, this is what we know about Brexit and the economy. In 2020, then Prime Minister Boris Johnson agreed a trade deal with the EU, in which the UK left the single market and the customs union. Mr. Johnson saw it as
a deal which will, if anything, allow our companies and our exporters to do even more business with our European friends.
That's not happened yet. This is the non-partisan Institute for Fiscal Studies.
We've lost a large fraction of our trade with the European Union, including with high-value professional services trade. That's making us poorer.
Or there's the UK's trade as a whole. The Office for Budget Responsibility is the official body that provides independent economic analysis. It's concluded there's been a 15% reduction in trade intensity as a result of Brexit.
Yeah, Brexit is a total disaster. We heard that. I saw you nodding. You're not...
Well, that's just the propaganda, isn't it? I mean, the establishment never, ever thought that we were going to leave. They thought they could control the vote and the minds of the people and intimidate them into scaring them. Project Fear that, we can't stand on our own, we're not big enough. Our trade with the rest of the world, which is where all the economic growth was coming from, not from Europe. Europe has very slow economic growth. Our trade has grown faster than anybody in the Eurozone with the fastest growing economies of the world.
We don't hear that in this video.
We don't hear any of that. And
so it is a success, you say, Brexit?
Well, we saw, if you look on the internet, you'll see that Klaus Schwab made a diktat through the World Economic Forum that the media had got to never publish the trade figures, which would show that Brexit was an economic success. It had to be downplayed, and the BBC are part of the propaganda.
And why is that, you think?
Because other people would want to leave. I mean, for me, it was
other states, other member states.
Well, yes, of course. If the UK could make a decent fist of leaving the European Union, that would encourage others. So we had to be punished. I mean, the deal we did with Europe was crazy. So we agreed with all our former partners in the EU that you can export to us. We have no checks on your goods. We trust you. No tariffs. But when we want to sell goods to you, we have checks and tariffs.
Yeah. So they're actually punishing
UK. We're punishing us. So we're saying, look, we accept your goods are as good as they were when we were full trading partners in the. We accept all that, but of course we had to be punished. They had to punish the UK, otherwise everyone else would leave. It was never about trade for me. It was always about sovereignty. It was the fact that you've got unelected bureaucrats, people like Ursula von der Leyen running Europe, who no one could vote for and no one could get rid of. And it was moving democracy and sovereignty away from the people who voted me into my parliament. And it isn't parliament that's sovereign. Every person in the world is sovereign in their own country. That's where the sovereignty lies. And what we're seeing slowly is it's moved further and further and further away from the people to where these unaccountable people like Ursula von der Leyen, she makes announcements which no one's voted for in Europe, whether that's for a war with Russia or digital IDs or more nonsense about...
That is exactly what Donald Trump is doing in America.
Net zero and more taxes to pay for these policies which are actually taking away your freedom, making you poorer, colder and less free. I mean, and they paint a very grim future for humanity, don't they? I mean, we're now staring down the barrel of the first generation in a very long time where we could expect, if we don't do something...
This is how I'd learn AI in 2026. 25. And AI will create a new wave of millionaires more than the internet did before. It's the perfect time to start.
So this is how I became the most dangerous person in the room. One habit changed everything. I replaced social media with micro-learning. Now, instead of wasting time on social media, I spend 15 minutes a day actually learning how to use AI for writing, planning, brainstorming, and
Okay, no, don't do that. AI causes brain rot. It's scientifically proven. Like, this is weird. Let's get back to it.
In a very long time where we could expect, if we don't do something, our children will have a worse life than we had.
Yeah, but help me out here, Andrew, because when I heard about Brexit and it really actually happened...
In America, children currently, like my children, don't have it as good as I did.
And the UK leaving the EU, I thought, wow, this is a sign that the UK really wants to be a sovereign, a free country. But the opposite seems to happen. I mean, the Brit card is being rolled out. Yeah. People are being arrested because they express themselves on social media. I mean, what the hell is going on in the UK? I mean, Brexit didn't bring the promise that I thought was going to happen.
We only had the downside of Brexit. We never were allowed to have any of the good side.
But why did it ever happen then? Because
people like me genuinely sold the people that we would have the ability to take back control of our own democracy and our own laws. The sad thing is that the establishment realised it. With the UK being out of the EU, it makes us harder to control. They knew we were going to have a pandemic. They knew that we're going to have the rollout of digital ID, and it just makes it harder for the UK to be controlled. And we are a player, so we had to be punished. And they also realised that, perhaps Poland doesn't want to agree with the European Union, or perhaps Hungary doesn't want to, perhaps Slovakia doesn't want to, and there'll be a lot of discontent. So they had to punish the UK, and our governments are part of that, and they've allowed us to be punished.
You think Brexit is in the end going to be rolled back?
It's being rolled back now. Starmer's put us into the European Defence and Securities Union. So although we've left the European Union, he's signed our Army, Navy, Air Force, our secret intelligence services, our nuclear deterrent, and our local police force under the control of Ursula von der Leyen. How's that not treason?
You could also say, well, that's a sovereign decision.
No, that's
in theory.
That's a treasonous decision. And he didn't even have a vote and debate in the House of Commons because he wouldn't have got it through. Didn't even explain it to the people what they've done. That's where we are. When Tony Blair, who's a very evil man, and if you look at his face now, you'll see that he's like a devil sick of sin. In 97, when they got in with New Labour, it's very telling. The first piece of legislation they rushed to put through the House of Commons after 17 years in opposition was never in their manifesto. No one understood at the time why they did it. But their first priority was to take the death penalty out of the Treason Act in 1997. Looking back now, it is evident why they took the death penalty out of the Treason Act. Because that government, and every government since, has committed treason against the people.
You think they're actually taking care of themselves?
Absolutely. Well, of course they do. What? Ask them why. Why, after 17 years in opposition, was your first priority is we've got to take the death penalty out of the Treason Act? Why? Because they were committing treason, and they knew they were. And every government has done it since, all different.
In America, they used to tar, feather, I think, or they were drawn and quartered, maybe. That's what they did. They definitely shot them, too. So, yeah, they executed traitors in our country. Now we can't even get a governor kicked out of office for treason, They're like stuck with them. They've done a lot to protect themselves, and we've kind of just let them.
So they fear tribunals.
And Rishi Sunak. What he never told anybody was that when he was Chancellor during the pandemic, and later Prime Minister, is that he had acquired 11% of Moderna shares in 2016 for $500 million. It was held in a fund based in the Cayman Islands for tax purposes called Thalim, and Rishi Sunak was one of the founding partners of it. And he bought £500 million worth of shares in Moderna when they only had 10 employees and no products. And I put, a year ago almost, I put a legal letter onto Rishi Sunak, a letter before action, where I accused him of all of this, and because of that financial interest, he had an interest in suppressing me, raising concerns about the safety and efficacy of the vaccines, which he was a major shareholder in. And his response to that legal letter, he couldn't rebut any of my accusation of his financial interest. He's guilty. But he's still a very, very powerful man, and he's a very rich man, worth probably over £1 billion, married to a woman whose father is the second richest man in India, who also owns Infosys, which we're bringing in the digital ID worldwide. They're all in each other's pockets. I remember the day that Rishi Sunak was elected to Parliament in 2015, and this rather unimpressive Indian chappie arrives in Parliament, and already in the tea room they're saying he's going to be a future Prime Minister. Well, how did they know on day one that he was going to be a future Prime Minister? They said the same about Keir Starmer when he arrived in 2015. He's going to be a future Prime Minister. It's all organised. It's what you see in your Parliament is nothing more than a pantomime. It's a pantomime to give the illusion of some sort of democracy and choice. And when we're no longer, and anybody who's still falling for this left-right nonsense, that the choice is left or right, we're not in the politics of left and right. We're on the politics of right and wrong. Right and wrong now. And I was considered, a right-winger. And it's just nonsense. You're either an authoritarian or you're a libertarian. And I didn't really realise how much of a libertarian I was until I saw how authoritarian the government and how many freedoms they want to take away from the people. To the point where you wouldn't even be able to have this discussion between ourselves about the protection of children from child trafficking and paedophiles, because we wouldn't be allowed to have this conversation.
One too many pairs of shoes?
And paedophiles, because we wouldn't be allowed to have this conversation. We're arresting 12,000 people a year in the UK for social media posts. We say that Russia's not a free country. They arrested 300, and they've got twice the UK population, more than twice the UK population. We arrested 12,000. And people have got 31 months in prison. We're in the weird situation in the UK now, Fabio, where if you call someone a paedophile, you go to prison. If they are a paedophile, they don't go to prison.
It's confusing, huh?
Yeah, but they're trying to minimise paedophilia. They're calling it now minor attracted people. Minor attracted people, and I gave a speech and I said that if you show me a minor attracted person, I'll show you a paedophile, and then that was taken down on social media as offensive.
Amazing, this wordplay.
They're normal. They're trying to normalise it, which again doesn't make you think that what we're seeing in these documentaries and the evidence coming to us is correct, and we must resist it, because without our children, that's the future, and it is the biggest affront to God and society to abuse children, and if children are abused, that trauma of abuse will go through the next 3 generations, because it affects them very, very badly. So it's highly corrosive to our culture, and I believe, what our governments are doing, and we're seeing our countries deteriorate economically and culturally. This isn't by accident, and it's happening all across the so-called developed world at the same time. And the last time they were all in lockstep was during the pandemic, where, in the UK we'd got a pandemic response policy, which had taken decades. We just threw that in the bin, did what the World Health Organization said: lockdowns, mandates, masking, social distancing. At the end of that, in the UK, we had 1 million under 25s on the waiting list for mental health support after the lockdowns. That was the damage that we did to young people. And it's been deliberate. And what we're seeing now is deliberate. And the only way we're going to stop this is from the bottom up, by raising awareness of the public. I promise you that the solutions were not going to come from our parliaments down. Those are neutered a long time ago.
I want to talk about one more subject with you, Andrew. You mentioned digital ID and Keir Starmer. And Keir Starmer recently, a few months ago, explained to the press and to the UK citizens how he was going to roll out the Brit ID, and also that there was no question that it was going to be mandated. Let's just look at this historical clip.
Our immigration system does need to be fair if we want to maintain that binding contract that our politics is built on. Otherwise, it undermines trust. undermines people's faith that we're on their side, and their belief that the state can and will work for them. And that is why today I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID.
You will not be able to work in the...
He's a dandy, right? You guys see that, right? He's a total dandy, like the worst kind.
UK if you do not have digital ID.
That's an absolute red herring that he's saying that, this will stop the illegal migrants. In the UK, we have something called a national insurance number, which you have to work. No illegal migrant will have a national insurance number, therefore they won't be able to work because they can't produce a national insurance number.
So in fact, it's already taken care of, the problem.
So the problem's already taken care of, yes.
But did anybody in the press say that to him, that he was trying to solve a problem that was already...
The press are all pretty tame, aren't they? And the Conservative Party, the previous Conservative government, they'd done all the consultation on the digital ID, so it was always coming in. It wasn't in Keir Starmer's manifesto. He never told the people, vote for me because I'm going to give you a digital ID. And he's mandating it. Well, can you remember the last thing that governments mandated? You don't have to mandate something that's good for the people, do you?
But he's telling it as if he wants to recover trust. It's amazing how he changes...
Well, they're spinning it to the people. The digital ID is the biggest transfer of power from the individual to the state we've ever seen. And it's a one-way street. So you're giving our governments effectively the power over every aspect of our life. They can link our digital ID to our health records. They can say whether you've had all your vaccines or medications. They can link it to your bank account, and they link it to your internet access. They know exactly what if you're watching The Lighthouse, you're probably on a list somewhere. You need to stop doing this. You could be restricted on travel. So to give that sort of power to any government, you've got to really trust them.
Yeah, but
nobody trusts this government. But it's not even that, Fabio, because it'll be forever. So you'd have to trust a government that's going to be voted in next, which you don't even know what it is, and the one after that, and the one after that, and you'll be giving away your freedoms.
She died 2 weeks after delivering this message. Watch this before they delete it.
What is cancer exactly? It's an attack.
And you'll be giving away your freedoms, which is probably yours to do. But you'll be giving away your children's, your grandchildren's, and generations of our nations unborn, giving their freedom away because there's no way out of this.
So it's a big responsibility for everybody now, huh?
And it's a one-way street. And it's a trap, as far as I can see. And it's always going to be better not to get into a trap than to try and get out of it once we're in it.
But is it really going to happen, or is he just bluffing there? Is this really going to happen?
They've already done it. I think that they've already picked up that every interaction with...
What is the status now, then, about...
They've got 11 million people's digital ID already through something which the previous government, the Conservative government, brought in called the Government One login system. They're already collecting people's digital ID. They're doing it. When I landed at Schiphol now, I had to go through a digital ID to the European Union. So they took my fingerprints of my right hand, they took my facial recognition, and they've linked it to my passport. That's done. And they're going to keep that.
That's mandatory.
That's mandatory as you come into the country. And they took that.
But that's because you're English.
Because I'm English. But they've already got yours. They'll already have yours. Don't worry about it. We've got to. But if you say yes, any of us say yes to digital ID, effectively, you'll be in a position where you'll never be able to say no to the government ever again.
Yeah, but do you say they already have all your information, so don't worry about it?
No, we want to stop it. What they have got is in silos. So it's with your health records, it's with your driving.
It's compartmented.
But what they're going to do is when they pull it all together, then it becomes a huge database, and it's going to be a security risk because they're going to sell your data to corporations, And it's going to be hacked as well.
When do you think Brit ID or the Brit card is really going to be released? Because he says it's going to be mandated. So
Yes.
when?
Well, he said by the end of this Parliament, 2029. Well, and people think the Brit card stands for British. It's not. It's biometric registration, identification, and tracking.
Really?
Yes. They're so clever.
Wow.
People think, oh, it's patriotic. It's our Brit card. But of course, they're pushing as well. The Europeans and Starmer, they're pushing for a war with Russia. Of course, if they could get a war, we always have to have ID cards during wars, don't we?
Okay, well, there you go. Pushing for war with Russia, the United States, Britain, France usually collaborate with their bombings right in the Middle East. So if they're preparing for a war, we've got to be preparing for a war too, correct? Is that why we took Venezuela? You know, why we want Greenland? I believe so. World War III. Putting all the pieces in place. We have to remember the ultimate goal is to create a nation called North America, the North American nation. And who's going to run that? Well, I guess we'll see. We'll see if they even get there. But Mexico, Canada, Greenland will merge with the United States.
It helps their narrative to push this through as well. So two things we've got to do. We've got to prevent us getting dragged into an unnecessary war with Russia, which serves their purposes. Our governments will be able to bring in martial law and the ID cards and not go into digital ID. And then we're buying ourselves, humanity, the time for the truth to come out about many other things. And of course, obviously, we don't want X banning, which is the main source of news now in the UK, is X. And it's not under his control, under the government's control, so they want to ban that as well. It's a dystopian future, but if we all stand together, and as I said the other day at the event, no is a very small word. If billions of us around the planet say it, it will resonate even in the halls of the self-proclaimed elite, and they'll be worried. And there's a lot of us, and there's not many of those.
And do you believe in a brightful future? Are you still hopeful?
It's going to have to get worse before it gets better. It's going to be bumpy. But that's because we've got to wake more people up or persuade more people that we have to stand and stop this. And it is all about the children. And if you won't do anything else other than be aware that, unfortunately, there are terrible things going on around the world, and it involves the children. And surely any decent human being would want to stop that. And it is being perpetrated by our own governments. The same people who are told us that their vaccines were safe and effective, and that we've got to have digital ID because it's going to be for your security and convenience. Well, history shows us that anyone who's willing to give up their freedom for security ends up with neither freedom nor security. And the only person it's going to be convenient for is the government, who will be able to control you by restricting your freedoms. Our freedoms are rights. What our governments are trying to do is convince us that our freedoms are actually privileges. And of course, privileges can be removed if they consider that your behaviour is unsuitable. And people need to wake up to that, and we need to stop it now.
Thank you, Andrew, for joining my show Aan de Waterkant at the waterside, the first time in English. And for all international viewers, thanks for watching. If you're not subscribed yet to our channel, this is your chance. And if you want to support us with a donation, that will be great to keep this engine going, because we have to spread the word. Thanks for joining us. I said it again. And have a safe trip back to the UK.
Thank you, and keep the light shining from the lighthouse.
Thank you, Andrew Ridgen.
Thank you.
This program is brought to you by Bundle.
If we let them get away with their plan and go along to get along, it most certainly will lead to our death, whether physical or spiritual or both. But if we resist, we have a much greater chance of survival. And that's a very selfish way of looking at things. But if that's what motivates people to get to the next level, which is to repent, then yeah, that's what I'll support. I'm sure you got a lot of information from that. If you didn't, put in the comments what you know, because I'm sure there's a lot I can learn from you. I hope you have a fantastic, wonderful day. God bless you. Bye-bye. And I have to say, this man here.
Tar innovative technology, real root.
Narrative to push
This gentleman here, this ex-British MP, God bless him. May his children and their children and their children and their children and their children be blessed with long, healthy, happy lives. In Jesus' name. Both of these men and all of you as well. God bless you. God bless you. Love you. Goodbye.